Yeah.
by what I saw, and I didn't like it, and I wanted to see what could be done about it.
Do you think there are Olympic titles won by that?
Sure, for sure. In the 90s.
Hmm. Yeah, but you can't give me any names, right?
No,
No.
and I don't know any.
No.
Because if the only way I'd know something is if our systems caught somebody with respect to those things.
Yeah.
And then and we can, use Claudia as an example. She won a lot of gold medals. So.
Yeah. And you say
Blood doping is probably the most effective form of doping. You can expect and these sorts of studies have been done, where you can expect a 1 to 4% improvement in performance from even a modest level of blood doping. And if you're getting even 1% improvement in time in a 5,000 meter, that's the difference between being on the podium and being in 20th place. So,
yeah,
makes a big difference.
it does.
And actually, there's another aspect of this that I would like to bring out, and that is, if we talk about skating, all the skaters that get to the World Cup level are outstanding athletes and extremely good skaters. What we're talking about with these different doping things is we're just changing who comes in first and who comes in 15th. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about, which means it's a big deal, it's a huge deal, and it's why it's so important to have these systems in place so that we can ensure that the one who comes in first is doing it the right way. So.
Still in the back of my head, there's your remark about the Olympic athletes.
No?
How big is this? Do you have any idea?
What's in the 90s, where this was very prevalent, I wasn't doing my tests, or we didn't have tests. So I can't say with any degree of certainty who it was or how many it was or what percentage it was. I just know that there were people doing it, and it's a logical conclusion to think that some of the people who were winning gold medals at various Olympic Games along the way, probably from '88 all the way to 2002 and maybe 2006, were doing some of these things.
And you know this, or you suspect this, because of what you found later, at the early 90s?
Yeah, I suspect this because of what our system started to show, and that the behavior changed, and different people started winning. So it's a reasonable conclusion, though I certainly don't know any individual situations for sure.
Yeah. You set up this test.
Yeah.
And you got some results, obviously.
Yeah. Yes.
What about these results? What was the outcome?
I can't comment on individuals or nations or any of that kind of thing. But what I can say is that we found abnormal results. And what I mean by abnormal results is that these results, although it's theoretically possible that they are obtained by natural or normal means, there's an extremely high probability that these profiles that we saw were due to some form of blood manipulation or EPO use or similar sorts of drugs. And when we first started doing it, we found a lot of abnormal profiles.
What do you mean by a lot?
Oh.
Like in percentage?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back. it's
I read somewhere that it was between 10 and 15%.
yeah,
So that's one in every 8 athlete.
would have an abnormal profile. That does not still necessarily mean that that was doping.
Yeah, but at least a little suspicious.
Suspicious.
Yeah.
And this was another aspect of the program. You know, when you, let's say you are caught with EPO or whatever, normally it's a 2-year ban from sport. Because we were not certain this was due to doping, our bans were more like you missed the next race or you can't come back for 2 weeks, which is a lot. You know, on one hand, there's a couple of things that are, in my opinion, pretty smart about it, because firstly, any of these people that are really trying to compete on the World Cup, they kind of have to make all the races if they want to score the points to get the money at the end of the day. And so even if they miss 2 weekends or two sets of competitions, that's a big deal for someone who's trying to do that. At the same time, it's not saying that, you know, you're out for the next 2 years and you're going to miss the Olympic Games because we're so certain that this was doping. We're saying it's likely it's doping, and we have concerns for your health, and we have concerns for an even playing field, and so therefore we think this 2-week non-start is appropriate. So and this is also a little bit of the thing that's smart. So what happens is we put this program in place, and we get some abnormal results and that sort of thing, and the athletes and the public hears about this, and then the athletes, the ones who may have been not doing the right thing, go, well, these guys can now see this, and so if I'm smart, I'm going to have I can't afford to do this anymore. And so then
Did
they
you
stop.
address the skaters that were suspicious?
Not well. The SAFE program, if we have a abnormal result that would result in a no start, we approach the athlete and inform the athlete, and then allow them to take another test in case we've somehow made a mistake. And so the athletes with abnormal profiles would know about this, as would their team doctors. And very quickly, the word spread that A, we could see things, and B, that there may be a bit of a problem. And just that, without actually banning anybody, we were able to get a lot less doping, or put it this way, we ended up having a lot less abnormal profiles over time. And now,
and what is over time? A year later?
yeah, a year or two, and really every year since then, it's one of the things that's nice to look back, is that the average profile of the skaters ends up coming much more normal and much more like just any other human being. Then what happens is if we have an abnormal sample, and the technician sees this, because what happens is we run through these things, and there's certain parameters that are set on the machine to say this is abnormal.
Yeah.
And
just then you start saying, okay, who is this number?
Well, no. At that point, they're just run again.
Okay.
And then after they're abnormal twice, and this is just with a number, then the ISU medical officer in charge of the event is notified. And then he or she comes and examines the results, and then he has the ability to match a certain barcode number with a certain athlete. And they do that to be able to inform the athlete and the team doctor that there's been an abnormality here, and now you have a chance to repeat the sample with a new blood draw, and but if this is also abnormal, then there may be a no start the next day.
Yeah.
And so what's very nice about this, and also as a protection for the medical officer, before the medical officer is sent notice that there may be an abnormal sample, the raw data is sent to ISU headquarters, and it is looked at and it is saved in a format so that if the medical officer decided to not act this would get caught, and if the medical officer, for whatever reason, or the blood technician or whatever, wanted to change the numbers, that would also get caught. So we have, we would have
all types of security.
Yes,
Yeah.
information going
Yeah.
to different continents,
Yeah.
so that it would be extraordinarily difficult for someone to play with these numbers.
Yeah.
And it also puts the medical officer in a very strong position of saying, hey, look, I was just given these numbers, and this is the procedure that I'm supposed to do under ISU. It's not that I have anything against you or your nation or anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so it's a very anonymous, blinded situation. And then what to do about particular abnormal results was always decided at an ISU medical committee meeting in the spring, well away from any competition. So it wasn't like, okay, well, now we have an abnormal sample, now what do we do with it? All of these decisions were taken based on data and at a separate time and a separate place from how all this would work. So we felt that was one of the strengths of our program, is we put in something that was extremely fair, and there was, I don't know about impossible, but extremely difficult to manipulate the situation. And that kind of problem has come up in other sports where there's been accusations of this, that, or the other thing. Our system protects both the medical officer, the technicians, the athlete, everybody, to say that this is what it is. It's a fair system and a safe system.
Do you think the blood passport is the answer to cheaters?
Yes, with respect to blood doping problems, yes. I think it's...
Would you say, sorry to interrupt, would you say that speed skating, as we're talking about now, is clean these days?
For the most part. It's conceivable that someone finds a way to get around the system a little bit, but extremely difficult, and they would have to be extremely organized. And another really nice aspect of the safe system or the biologic passport is the more you dope, let's say the more blood you transfuse, or if you take a very high dose of EPO, that makes the passport extremely abnormal. And similarly, if there's just a little bit of doping, let's say, then it doesn't disturb the passport quite as much. And so as you go down in let's say the amount of doping, or taking 50 milliliters of blood instead of 500 milliliters of blood, doing that is harder and harder to detect with the passport system. But at the same time, 50 milliliters of blood does nothing for the races. So what happens is, with this thing, is those people that are gaining the best advantage on their competitors are going to be the most visible to the system. And those who maybe do a little or try to get away with a little, yeah, they're still cheating, but they're not gaining the advantage on their competitors like they used to be. And so, who knows if somebody's trying to, shade the edges and do these things. But I think even if they are, they're not gaining an advantage. And so what we get back to at the end of the day is a safe and an even playing field. Because also the medical complications associated with these things are associated with big doses and large transfusions and other sorts of things. So
yeah, it's not the case anymore. But it was in the early 90s.
Yes. I think there was a big problem in the 90s with both the use of EPO and some of the related substances that came later, as well as with transfusions, both of someone else's blood and taking your own blood out and then having it given back to you.
You've seen all that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's shocking.
Yeah, people want to win.